Welcome to today's webinar, Starting a Value-Added Food Business. This is part of the Cultivating Success Small Farm webinar series. Thank you for joining us today. Our speaker today is Jen Werlin. Jen is an extension educator with University of Idaho located in Teton County. She'll be operating the slides from her computer, and I am Colette Phelps. I will be your moderator today. So Jen, if you could please go to the next slide.
It's not working. Let's try it. There we go.
Thanks. Okay, so here you can see a picture of Jen and a picture of myself. Next slide, please. I want to go over a couple of webinar tips before we start today. First, it could be helpful to you to close the other programs that are running on your computer so you can dedicate your bandwidth, your Wi-Fi bandwidth to this webinar. If you're having any problems with your sound, clarity, or speed, you can call into the webinar on the telephone and listen in that way, and then view over your computer. A call-in number is provided in your welcome email. If you do decide to call in, please mute your computer sound when you're on the phone so you don't get any feedback. There are two opportunities for typing in questions and asking for help with technology in this webinar. First, we have a chat, and you'll see that is located at the bottom of your screen. I will be monitoring the chat, and that's where you should type in any issues you're having in terms of technology. So if something's happening with sound, the speed with your computer, go ahead and type it in there. I'll respond to you directly and let you know if that's something that's happening on your side or we're experiencing an overall glitch with the system. If you have questions for Jen, you can type those in the Q&A box, and we will have time during this webinar where we will stop and she will answer those questions. So just to review, the chat is for technology issues. The Q&A, question and answer box, are for questions for Jen. Tomorrow I will be posting the handouts from this webinar, the slide handouts, to the Cultivating Success website, so you do not need to take all of those notes. Those will be available to you as well as a recording of this webinar. With that, Jen, I'm going to go ahead and turn the webinar over to you.
Great, thank you, Colette. So we first would like to ask you all a few questions about yourself. And we have a poll going on, and the first one is, who is in the audience today?
If you haven't done one of these online surveys before, you can just click the answer or answers that are most appropriate to you. Great. And I can see the percentage of folks who voted, so I'll just give it a couple more seconds so everybody has an opportunity to vote. Okay, I'm going to end that and share the results. So here we can see the results. Looks like everyone is either currently a small business owner or soon to be a business owner. We have some farmers, people that are baking and cooking, looking at being specialty food entrepreneurs, and we even have another extension educator on. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing the results, and we can move to the next slide.
So the second question is, where are you located?
Okay, launching that poll. I'd like to know if you're joining us today from Idaho or somewhere outside of the region. And again, I can monitor how many people have been able to vote, so I'll give it a few more seconds. Looks like we just need to have one more participant vote, and I can end the polling and share the results. So here we see that we have a person in North Idaho, another person in Southwest, and two people joining us from Southeast Idaho. Great, so thanks for doing those polls.
Yes, thank you. So today, the following objectives are outlined for our webinar. First is to learn a bit about processing requirements for raw fruits and vegetables and how to have that go into a finished value-added product. The second is to understand the differences in cottage food products versus other regulated products. And lastly, to provide you with the resources to legally and successfully package, label, and sell your value-added agriculture food products. So farm entrepreneurs look for ways to increase their profits all of the time. So you can add value and a greater return on your products by cooking, canning, freezing, frying, chopping, or pickling your raw agriculture products, and then sell them in jars, pouches, cans, bottles, bags, or boxes. So according to the USDA, they define value-added products as products that change their physical state or form. So this is one example is taking milling wheat and making that into flour, or turning strawberries into a jam or jelly. There are also products that were produced in a manner that enhances its value. So this could be certified organic products or biodynamic products. And then they are also defined as products that are physically segregated agricultural commodity or product that results in enhancement of the value of that commodity or product, like an identity preserved marketing system. So the word value is somewhat subjective in the definition, but you can capture value or create value. So you ultimately get paid for providing value to the customer. Value added focuses on production or manufacturing of a product. Remember, however, that adding value by processing food products increases safety risks. So rules and regulations are established to protect public health. And if you're selling out of the state, the Federal Food and Drug Administration rules apply. The FDA has good manufacturing practices, those are known as GMP, upon which state regulations are based. So providing value can be marketing a unique product, filling a niche, simplifying the supply chain, so making it more convenient for either the distributor or the customer, providing a service, or perhaps lowering a cost, or so forth. So remember that increasing value increases your return. So we all want that. Some potential questions to answer include, why do you even want to start the business enterprise? And then what makes your idea special? So if you're coming up with a new product, what do you think will make it successful? And what are your strengths? So evaluate as you get started, what are your strengths and what do you like to do? And what do you need help with? So be honest with yourself. Do you need to contract out for some help, or do you need to have a partner who likes to do different things than you or brings other strengths to the table? And then what are the rules and regulations involved? So is your product a cottage food, or do you need to apply for a food business license and use a certified kitchen facility for processing? So as you get started, you'll need to do some research. You'll need to do some homework and research the market potential of your food products, who will buy your product, and the amounts and prices that will generate a profit to you. First, you need to develop your idea and develop a strategy that makes your product unique. So this is either real or perceived uniqueness. And food manufacturing in particular, continues to face narrowing margins and decreasing profits. Retailers are increasingly wielding more power over food wholesalers and manufacturers to pay for more shelf space, making it harder for smaller producers. You'll need to learn some marketing skills, if you don't already have those skills. And because of these decreasing profit margins, consider targeting niche food markets. You also need to assess the feasibility and test it out. So as you're developing your product, try to get a few people to be your guinea pigs, so family members or friends, to try some prototypes. And with niche markets, this is where producers offer a high quality, or they have high quality attributes like certified organic or certified naturally grown, biodynamic, fair trade, specialized health products, and so forth. For a niche product, producers can charge sometimes up to 30% more over mainline markets. So today's consumers demand quality and freshness, and you can capitalize on the consumer's demand for uniqueness, freshness, a desire for different tastes, natural, organic, and local. And then another consideration is to try out direct marketing to capture more of the food marketing dollars. So there won't be any sort of middleman that might potentially take away some of your profits. So a bit about the Cottage Food Act in Idaho. In different states, some of the surrounding states have similar bills that have been approved or voted on in the last few years. But under the Idaho Food Code, cottage foods are foods that are made at a person's home or other designated location, and they're sold directly to the consumer within the state of Idaho. So you have to use that direct marketing outlet. There are also food items that are low risk and don't require time and or temperature control for safety. So some examples are listed on the slide, and this includes baked goods. So it could be bread or pastries, cookies, honey, fruit jams and jellies, so low acid foods, candy, cotton candy even, dried fruit and herbs, seasonings and mixtures. It also includes like granola and trail mixes, vinegars, popcorn, and tinctures that don't have any sort of medicinal claim. The excluded items include the low acid canned foods, fermented foods, or acidified foods. So you need to use a commercial certified kitchen for those items. Examples include pickled products and salsa. And these need to be inspected by the health department when processed. Cottage foods also, they don't need to have a health department permit. So items are sold often through farmers market outlets, home sales, roadside stands, even online or mail order within the state of Idaho. You can also have personal delivery without oversight by the Department of Health and Welfare. When starting out your value-added food business, it's imperative that you develop a business plan. This will help you focus your business goals and determine if you need funding. So you can get help writing a business plan with your local Idaho Small Business Development Center. And there's centers throughout each region throughout the state. And you can also get help from the U.S. Small Business Development Center. And they have staff on hand to work with you one-on-one. The first component of a business plan is product development. So this is going into the what, the why, who, so like the customer, when. This includes your timeline and your action items, and then where. This includes both your processing and then where you're going to be selling your products. You also typically have a financial section in your business plan. So this includes the cost to produce the product, so all the ingredients, even including your labor costs. And this will all help inform the price of your product. As well as a marketing section is in your business plan. So this is what makes your product special. And it also identifies who are your customers and your competitors. And then there's typically a sell section of your business plan. So this is where you're going to sell your product and how it will be distributed. So you can go through a decision tree and kind of do your first initial steps for getting started at this website, this following URL. It's idahobizhelp.idaho.gov. So check that out and you can start going through your business idea. Another thing to keep in mind is that it's really helpful to start small. So start with selling at perhaps farmers markets. It could be fairs or roadside stands, and do that and perfect that before you start going much larger and selling to retail outlets. When developing your business model, there's a few things that you need to think about in terms of financing your business. So often to get loans or startup funds, it really depends on the size and type of your product, what's available to you. But if you're going to get a loan, you need to have some things that you bring to the bank. So this includes information about yourself. You need to have a business plan. So they need to know that the lender needs to know that you're organized and have a plan and goals for the future and how you're going to achieve those goals. Do you have any sort of savings that you can use for startup funds? And there often are some pretty high capital costs when you get started. So do some saving, and some of these costs include licenses, equipment, advertising costs, and then ask yourself, will the business operations be covered with the money you make from sales? So these are all important questions to assess the feasibility, the financial feasibility of getting started. There are a lot of legal issues, so the next few slides, I'm going to focus a lot on legal issues and business requirements. And while some people don't find this as interesting, these are important questions to ask. And even with cottage foods, there's a lot less legal issues or compliance requirements. However, you need to know what's out there, and at a certain point you'll be capped in terms of how much you can produce. And there's some people, even if they're producing cottage foods, they start taking over their home kitchen. Before long, they have no kitchen for their own personal use, and there's no division between their home life and their business, and they might not even have space. So all of these are important factors to consider. Depending on where you live, you may need to get a business license from your city or your county. So to find out, contact your local county or city clerk or recorder's office. And you'll need to have some sort of tax ID. So for sole proprietorships, you can use your social security number. Otherwise, you can develop you can get a business license and use an EIN number. And I do advise not going the sole proprietor route simply because your finances with your business are going to be entwined with your own personal finances. And if there ever is an issue, if someone's suing you, they could go after your home, your personal finances. So there's also health license that you need to consider. If it's not an exempt food with the Idaho Cottage Food Law, you'll need to follow the Idaho Food Code, and this governs the food sanitation standards in the state. So you apply for a food license with your local health district. So to get to know your local health inspector, they want to help you. They don't like shutting people down. And even if you have a cottage food, get to know them. They can help you learn about best practices in food safety and also help give you some ideas if you do outgrow your home kitchen and where to go from there. There are 7 food districts in Idaho, and your food license is good for 1 year, and this can be renewed on an annual basis. And it only applies to the product you're making specific to the certified commercial kitchen you're using. So if you change locations or you add a product, you need to get new approval. There's also mandatory supervisor training. So in many cases, that's you. So you're the person who has to go through that training. If you have an employee, at least one of you must be trained in food safety and sanitation during the food preparation. And you'll be required to go over that whole process with the health inspector. There are also Food and Drug Administration regulations. So if you're selling products across state lines, and we have a few areas in the state where that's very common. So like in the Treasure Valley, you might be selling to Oregon. Up in the Palouse region, you might be selling over to Washington as well as Oregon. And then even on my side of the state, in southeast Idaho, there's a lot of interstate commerce between Teton counties, Wyoming, and Idaho. So Wyoming. So that's when you'll start to need to go through the Food and Drug Administration. Acidified foods like salsa or pickles require the manufacturer to complete the Better Process Control School class, and you can go through that with your health department. And then as part of the Bioterrorism Act that was passed in 2002, companies that manufacture, process, or pack food for human consumption also must register with the FDA. So this is a free registration. And now with the new Food Safety Modernization Act, FSMA, there are additional requirements for manufacturing facilities. And we have lots of webinars that talk about the FSMA with these Cultivating Success 2019 webinars. So you can go to the Cultivating Success website and find those webinars. This URL on our slide also is a great resource to go to figure out what those requirements are. For small companies with little interstate commerce, the FDA often contracts out with your state health department district. So again, just developing a relationship with your local health inspector is really important, and they'll be able to help you get started and figure out what sort of FDA or USDA rules you may need to comply with. The U.S. Department of Agriculture also has regulations for products that aren't cottage food. So if a product has 3% or more meat products, you need to go through a USDA approved processing facility. And there's labeling requirements as well. And for the purpose of our webinar today, we don't have time to go into the different types of labels, but there are generic, and then there are FSIS LAPD label standards. And so the USDA can help you with that information. There's also requirements for having a hazard analysis at critical control points plan. And again, start with your health inspector. They're the first relationship you should really develop, and then they'll be able to help you with the USDA and FDA requirements as well. You'll need to think about insurance requirements. So product liability insurance is recommended, and it protects businesses in the event that a product causes bodily harm or property damage. So you'll need to be really taking care of yourself. Plan for the future, plan for the worst, hope for the best. There's general business liability, and there's also interruption and specific time element coverage insurance, as well as property or professional loss insurance. The URLs listed on the bottom of the slide are a great resource to get started. So check out insureonline.org. Little bit about trademarks. So when you're developing your unique product, it does make sense to trademark that. It's a legal claim to the exclusive right to use a logo, name, or other mark. And the item or the element must have a unique quality. We do recommend that you register your trademark under state law or federal law. And so uspto.gov is a great link to go to learn more about trademarks. And then Idaho's application for registration is also listed on this slide. Often food processors or producers who want to get into value added ask me about packaging and labeling. This is almost could be another class, but to get started, for packaging, containers can be glass, plastic, cellophane, paper, cardboard, wood, or metal. And the product packaging has to protect that product. So you want to make sure that you don't have any contaminants coming in. In terms of UPC codes, they're not required for many places, but more and more retailers are requiring people to have the UPC code. So you can get more information on this website listed on that bullet point. And then in terms of marketing, even the packaging sometimes is just important as the product. More and more people are buying things just because of a whim and if it looks good or if it's appealing to them as the customer. So taking time when you're developing your business and marketing plan to think about the packaging at the beginning is also important. And then even revising it as you learn. So you're going to need to consider components like branding, your consumer appeal, the federal and the state laws, what the retailer requires, and then the cost of packaging. So if the packaging is going to make the food product cost prohibitive, it may not be worth it. Avoid odd sizes and have the product fit and stack on standard store shelves. Or if you're having your own display shelf, like at a farmer's market and you're doing direct marketing, what type of size would be easy for you to display your product. So keep in mind that smaller sizes do encourage repeat sales. And you can generate approved labels with the following URL. So it's a long one, so you can write that down, or we'll also give you copies to the slides. And a little bit more about labels. Please do your homework and follow the FDA rules. You'll need to consider the design, printing, artwork, colors, and costs. There are federal FDA label requirements as well as ingredient lists. So you'll need to include any sort of allergens that might be in your food. And other requirements are a principal display panel, PDP, of the container, and then the name of the food and the amount and quantity of the food. There's also information panel with the ingredient list and so forth. And I believe it was just in the last year or two that they came out with new label requirements. So the label maker on the previous slide can help you with that. The FDA rules and the labeling guide are also listed on the bottom of this slide. So special labels like organic or nutritional claims do require additional regulations. In terms of the cottage food labels, this is voluntary to a degree, but more and more it's recommended that you follow these requirements, and your local health inspector can also help you, even if you have a cottage food label. So the requirements are to have your business name and your physical address. So not just a mailing address, it's the physical address. You'll need to have a way to be contacted, whether by phone or email. And then the statement of the product identity. So this includes like saying what it is. Like if you have honey, it will say local honey or honey. You'll need to have that list of ingredients and allergens, the date that it's produced, and then a statement of the net quantity. Also include a disclaimer that says made in a cottage food operation that is not subject to routine government food safety inspections. So I mentioned this before, but any sort of organic or gluten-free or other special claims may be subject to other requirements and regulations. There are lots of different places where you can begin processing your foods. But the one nice convenient thing about cottage foods is that you can process those foods at home. So you have the convenience of being at home. You still need to make sure that you are practicing safe produce and food handling best practices. Make sure that the containers are clean, that they're sealed and they're labeled properly. And if you have a glass container, it needs to have a metal lid. If you're processing at a certified commercial kitchen, that could be a kitchen incubator or a restaurant, maybe a church or a school, that kitchen has to be approved by the health department. So that's where it becomes a certified facility. You'll need to consider your space requirements, what type of equipment is required. And so if you're using that commercial kitchen, the equipment all needs to go through that approval process. Consider what type of storage you have, as well as parking and even with the hours of operation. So if you're using a restaurant, that could make your work hours a little tricky. You might have to work in the middle of the night or early in the morning when the restaurant's not open. So those are all factors to consider. And then also if you have room for expansion. So does that facility have storage on site, or are you going to need to transport things back and forth between different storage facilities? Storage is also going to be evaluated, and it has to be certified with your health inspector. So I want to just reiterate that it's important to start small to go big. Get used to doing things on the small scale and really perfect those strategies. And then once you've gotten to a place where you feel like you've outgrown that, then take those next steps. A lot of businesses fail because they try to tackle too much too soon. Be meticulous with record keeping. So keeping track of the time that it takes for you to do things, to go through a recipe, the quantities involved, even all of the regulatory requirements need to be closely tracked. Create a high quality product. So consider consulting a processing authority to scale up the recipe if needed. So if you have that family recipe and you want to take it onto a bigger scale, even just taking it to the farmer's market, you might need to do some formulation changes. You'll need to have this also, if you're scaling up, tested and for the regulatory requirements. And also determine the cost of ingredients. So if you're scaling up and it's you're scaling up a home recipe, you may, for instance, not need as much garlic for a salsa if you're going bigger. So it just depends. So those professionals can help you. Whoops. and follow demand. So stay abreast of the different marketing trends. I encourage you to peruse magazines like Bon Appetit or even Sunset and see what the trends are. Try to stay ahead of the trends. And also be aware of any sort of changing rules and regulations. So if you have that good relationship with your health inspector, they can also keep you informed. Plan for the future. So if you get to a point where you're really busy and you're working multiple jobs and you're finding that your business is taking off and you might want to try to see what's your plan for going bigger. And you know, this could be, you might have different goals, but this all goes into your business plan. Planning for the future. And then be okay with learning from your mistakes and then adapting as necessary, or even just adapting to future trends. Starting a value-added business is a lot of hard work. It's so hard. But so that's where it's important to really enjoy what you do. What makes you intrinsically motivated, and stick with it. Persevere. Don't give up. So there are lots of advantages to starting a value-added or a specialty food business. And some of them include that you're your own boss. So this is great if you have that entrepreneurial spirit and you want to be your own boss. There's also a lot of flexibility with the work. You can work when you want to. And then there's so much variety. And there's lots of outlets for you to be creative, to constantly learn, to network with others. And other advantages include growth potential and even just personal satisfaction. So there are a lot of resources out there. Be careful what you read online. Make sure that you're getting information from a reputable source. So you can start with the Idaho State Department of Agriculture and their Market Development Division. There's a phone number on this slide as well as their website. As well as in the state of Idaho, we have the University of Idaho Food Technology Center and Agribusiness Incubator in Caldwell. And their phone number and their website's available there. They can work with you one-on-one. So they're a tremendous resource. And even folks who are across the state, plan when you're getting started to take a field trip there. Go and meet them. You can talk to Jim Toomey, who's in charge of that Food Technology Center. And they'll also be able to help you with that product development as well as business development. So bookmark that resource. ATRA, the National Sustainable Agriculture Information Service, also has a lot of information. The Adding Value to Farm Products publication is a great start. Some of that information is dated, though. I think that publication's about 10 years old, so that's where staying informed and developing the relationship with your health inspector is important. The U.S. Small Business Administration, there's an office in the Boise area, and they're a great resource. And you can also meet with them one-on-one. And then check out SCORE, Counselors to America's Small Business. So it's score.org. And this is a network of retired business owners and executives who volunteer to provide free counseling to small business people. Learn from people who have done it before, and they'll hopefully be able to give you some information about opportunities, the successes that they've had, And then even the challenges. So if we can learn from other people's challenges, that's always preferred. And then reach out to your local Idaho Small Business Development Center. There are several throughout the state based on your region. They also will meet with you one-on-one. So if you don't know where to start with your business plan, schedule an appointment with your local office, your regional office, and they'll help you get started. So the URL is listed on this slide as well. And then a lot of this information is from this presentation has come from the Starting a Specialty Food Business in Idaho publication. They just updated this publication in 2018, and now they have English and Spanish versions. So the URL listed on this is the English version of that. And you can also just go to their website and get some information. So now I'm wondering if anybody has any questions.
Thanks for that presentation, Jen, and that great introduction to so many resources. We don't have any questions yet, so I'd like to go ahead and give our attendees a couple minutes. If you have any questions, go ahead and type those into the question and answer box. And while you're thinking about that, I wanted to point out that in the chat panel, I sent a message to all the attendees about a small business startup loan program that offers 0% interest loans up to $10,000 for business entrepreneurs. This is at kiva.org, and it's a loan program that has specifically been developed to help folks interact with their community and find ways for their community to support them as business entrepreneurs. So the way that it works is that you do an application. A lot of the background that Jen gave you, especially about the story about your product, why, your market research, that would be important for your application. And then the basic business plan that she outlined would be important. You enter that into the system, and a Kiva staff person would review that program and get back to you. And then once your loan application for your business is approved, it would go into what is a crowdsourcing program. And that is something that you would then reach out through social media, and you would source some of the first individuals who would loan to your program. And this really is a loan. It's not a gift like a lot of crowdsourcing programs are. So in this, people can loan up to $25 or more. So 25 is the minimum, and it is money that they actually get back. So you would help source, depending on the amount of money that you're seeking, between 5 and 25 of those initial investments. And after that, your profile would go live on the kiva.org website. And then people all over the nation and actually all over the world would get to see your profile and decide to support your business. And then there are different payback periods, again, depending on the size of the loan. But you would have up to 5 years to pay back that loan, and your payback schedule would be part of your loan application. It's something that has been very successful for small business entrepreneurs in Montana, and I will send out an email that gives you a link to a Montana website where you can see some of the types of things that have been funded in the Missoula area. So if you are looking for up to $10,000, it's a great loan program. It also can help you establish a credit history for being able to pay back a loan, so that if you want to go to a more traditional funding source, you can use your experience with Kiva as part of your application to a bank or other funder. So with that, Jen, we didn't have any questions that came in from our attendees. So I want to go ahead and thank you all for participating. And then we just have a couple slides to show you where some additional resources are going to be located. So Jen, if you could go to the next slide.
Yeah, thank you for that, Colette. That kiva.org program sounds really awesome for our new food entrepreneurs out there.
Yeah, I think it'll be a great resource. And what I will do is here on the Cultivating Success website, if you click on the webinar series, you will be able to go in and see where to find the recording for this and all of our other webinars from this year. So when you go in there and you go into the resource page for this webinar, I will have a link posted to the kiva.org website and also to the Community Food and Ag Coalition that has descriptions of the loans that have been funded in the Missoula area. So that's where the resources will live. And then on the next slide, I can show you where you can find some more information in terms of product safety and particularly the Food Safety Modernization Act. And we have had, as Jen said, a number of webinars that are related to the Food Safety Modernization Act and how the rule that is associated with food processing, which is the Preventative Controls in Human Food Rule, how that applies to you depends on if you are classified as a farm or a qualified facility. And then once you know what you're classified as, and these webinars will help you figure it out, then you do need to register with the FDA specifically related to this rule. And most likely you'll be registering in a way that identifies that you have an exemption. So with that, I want to let you know that we have this website. It's pacificnorthwestfoodsafety.org with a lot of resources. This link will also be in posted where the webinar recording is so that you'll be able to access it, and those webinar recordings related to food safety will be linked from the Cultivating Success website individually. Next slide, please. I want to thank our partners, University of Idaho Extension, the Washington State University Food System Program, and Rural Roots for sponsoring Cultivating Success as a program and bringing this webinar series to you. And then finally, on our last slide, we have Jen's contact information, so you can contact her directly if you have any questions about today's program. Again, this slide set will be posted on the website and you'll be able to download it and you'll have all of those URLs that she showed us. Just after this webinar, you'll be automatically rerouted to take our post-webinar survey. And if you can do that, that would be really helpful. It will allow Jen to have some great feedback about this presentation and you can identify what else you would like to learn more about. Jen,
Great.
thank you so much for presenting today, and thanks to our attendees for joining us.
Thank you, Colette.
Okay, have a great day, everyone.